Hello everybody, and welcome to the fourth video in my Journey to Master series. Today I'm going to be going over the game that I played against Shri, who was actually the opponent that I played before I played Ralph Tan, which was the game I went over in the last episode. So that's kind of funny. This game I was playing white again, and this game, let's just say, it got very, very complicated very, very quickly, I think. Not as complicated as the game that I had against Caleb Denby. It's still very complicated. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you like and subscribe because it greatly helps me out. My subscriber count has gone up by a factor of 1.5 over the last 4 days, and all I can do is thank all of you for that. So thank you so much for the support. So without further ado, I started with d4, which is just my classic opening, and he played knight f6. So bishop f4, d6. And so here against d6, I will play knight c3 and hope that they play g6. After knight to c3, it's best to play knight to d7 and try and play this e5 move. After I play e4, kind of just striking in the center. But after knight c3, my opponent did play g6 and I got e4. After bishop g7, I play queen d2. All of this is theory so far. I've seen all of this before. Knight d7, knight f3, castles, and I castle long. And so we get the dynamic position where opposite side castling, I have a battery set up, and possibilities of being able to play e5. My opponent, however, saw e5. He played c5, which is a way of testing this. However, what I do here is I take, and after takes, I play this move e5 anyway. Now it is directly pinned to the queen, there's no doubt about it. But since there's not a knight there, e6 isn't so much of a threat anymore. However, this knight is under attack, and I am threatening to take the pawn. So if you play something like, say, knight h5, I'm just going to take the pawn, right? Takes, takes. If you take, then I take. And though my dark squares are a little bit weak, so is black's, right? Black's dark squares are going to be weak as well because they don't have a dark square bishop. And also, I just have a pawn too. So generally, this is good for me. So my opponent does not hang a pawn. He instead plays knight f to e4. And so here what I like to do as white is I like to take this knight, and after takes, I play this move queen to d3. Right now the queen is attacked, and if I try and move it somewhere else, it's defending f2. So I play queen to d3. I don't want to block my bishop and play queen to e2. So d3 is the best square. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm threatening the knight. And so you can defend this knight a few different ways. One, you can move it back to c5. You can play f5. You can play bishop to f5, or you can play d5. Three of these moves are really bad. Only one of them really works. That move is d5. That's the one that holds holds material for black. I believe all three of the other moves will lose material. So say f5. Now I will have something along the lines of this check, maybe some knight g5 here. I can try and take here, and after takes, play something like bishop c4, and after king h8, knight to g5 will end up winning a little bit of material because you have to take this, and after takes, I'm just going to target the pawn more. So this pawn ends up being very weak, and I will just eventually just win it. Queen c7, I'm not going to hang a bishop, but you know, general idea. So f5 isn't good because you get a really weak pawn. Bishop f5, defending the knight this way, actually loses a piece after g4, sacking a pawn, but the idea is I'm taking the bishop off of the defense of the knight. So you take, I take a knight. If you try and move the knight away, I just take the knight and take, and this is probably the best continuation for black, but even here I'm still going to be winning at least another pawn. Maybe not in this way, because then there's going to be this, and this could be annoying. So it might be a little bit better to do it with the rook. But, yes. And if you move the knight away, again, I was just threatening to take this pawn, so I just take the pawn. Right, so takes, 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 and I just win a pawn. But my opponent does play d5. And here, what I like to do is, I like to play this bishop to d3 move, just simply threatening to take the knight. I can't take it here, because after queen takes pawn takes queen, rook takes queen. I give up a rook for a knight, basically. That's what happens. If the queen was undefended, I would be up a piece here, assuming that my opponent doesn't take a knight. But even after they take here, now they're just up the exchange. So that's not good. So what I like to do is I like to play bishop to d3, just attacking the knight. So say something like d6, I just take the knight for free now because now it's a bishop that's hanging, not a queen. So my opponent plays queen to a5. And yes, I can win a pawn at e4, but this is definitely not what I want to do. Because if I try and take this like this and take the pawn, then queen to a2 comes, and the attack is going to very quickly mount up on my king over here. And I just cannot allow this to happen. So I do not get greedy and try and take the pawn. Instead, I just defend. And this gives black time to escape with the move knight to c5. And so here, in this position, I've had a lot of online games where something like f6 has been played, forcing this pawn to leave or take, and then this bishop has opened up and become a problem towards my king. And I really did not want that to happen. So what I did was I just traded it off right away. It's pinned to the rook, so you're forced to either take me or let me take you. And so here I had figured that my opponent would play something like knight takes d3, and I was going to try bishop takes g7. And after knight takes b2, I was going to play this move queen to h6 with the idea that after you take on d1, I was going to play either rook takes d1 or knight to g5. Knight to g5, there might be some sort of perpetual after queen to b4, so it might be better to take this right away. Actually, I do not think it is stoppable to, you either have to let me take this or let me play knight to g5. So say rook to d8, knight to g5. And I think I do now get out because I have the rook on d1. So if you try and continually check me, like so, I will eventually, not there. Oops. Whoa, that's not where I wanted to go. Where is the line? Right. Nope, that's still the wrong one. Man, I lost it. Where'd it go? Rook d8. Oh yeah, right here. And then, okay, yeah, here. And eventually what's going to happen is I'm just going to get out because I have the rook defending the back rank. So say something like this. Now I go this way. There's no check on the back rank. And I'm threatening mate in one. So that's what I had calculated if you tried to take on d3. But my opponent did not take on d3 after bishop h6, played this move queen to b4. And I thought, that move is really weird. The threat is knight to a4, right? So the threat is to play knight a4, threatening checkmate, or to take on d3 so that I don't have any queen h6 ideas when I take on g7. But I looked at this and I was like, but like, what if I just kick the queen out, right? I just gain a tempo on the queen, and now my bishop actually has a great square that it would prefer to be on rather than d3. And so the queen now has to move. If you go to b4, I'm going to take a knight. So you can either go back and still lose the knight, actually, or you can go back to b6, and now I take the bishop. And after you take on d3, I still play, no, I wouldn't play that there, but I would play either queen takes, and I'd be threatening the pawn, or rook takes, and still be threatening the pawn. Like this, say like this. And if you take on d3, then I can play queen takes threatening the pawn, or rook takes threatening the pawn, like this. And you have to spend time to recapture, so I just get the queen. In fact, it's even better to take like this first and then take the pawn. And after bishop here, I can play like this move. So it could be a little bit scary still, but I'm gonna get the knight in and my rook's attacking pawns. This seems like it'd be very good for white. But after bishop takes g7, my opponent played king takes g7, and what I did was I just simply played bishop to c2. I saved the bishop and say my bishop is completely dominating your knight right now. It cannot jump forward at all. If it goes here, it loses a pawn. Or gives you a really bad pawn structure, one of the two. Right? So the bishop is way better than the knight. And I'm also trying to line things up on the black king over this way. moves like knight g5, h4, h5, and you'll see that's actually kind of exactly what happens. My opponent spends a little bit of time to defend this pawn with rook to d8, and since I don't want any sort of queen trade things to happen, I just immediately block the diagonal so that now if he ever moves the knight, well, first of all, I can take this with check and then take this, and that would be very good for me, since again, these doubled V pawns are going to be the bane of black's existence if they ever happen. So my opponent instead plays queen to c7, which is a good move. I agree with this move. And I immediately start attacking with the move h4. I'm just simply threatening to play h5. You really cannot allow h5. Say you play something like, I don't know. Let's say you start to try attacking me with like here, and you're going to try and play b4, b5, b4. I've just play h5 right now. And if you try and play something like bishop to g4 even, I'm just going to play f3, let you take, and then take the bishop like this. Actually, even better is probably just to trap the bishop and not sacrifice a rook. So h5 is a huge threat, and my opponent stops it by playing, my opponent stops it by playing h5 himself. So now I can't push the pawn. But my idea is I really, really want to get h5 in, even if it means that I'm sacking a pawn. Because if I can get h5 in, I just kind of completely blow up the king's position. There's going to be no pawns left defending it, and I have a queen coming, a knight coming, a bishop pointing over towards the king. I have a rook that's over here. The other one can swing over very quickly. So all of my pieces are kind of lining up to attack this black king here. So after h5, what I do is I play f3, preparing to play g4. And yes, that is sacking a pawn again. Say a6, trying to start attacking me. I'm gonna play g4 anyway. And after h takes g5 or h takes g4, I don't care. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm not gonna take back. No, 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 no. That'd be too simple. I want to play h5. I don't care that I'm losing a pawn. I'm gonna open up the king and just blatantly attack it. Right? The king's way more important than any pawns are. So my opponent plays this move knight to e6, trying to trade off the knights because this knight could be powerful on f5 if it ever gets the opportunity to be there. The bishop's now even blocked, which is even better, so I just play g4 anyway. So he takes, and I play rook takes d4, defending the pawn. And he takes on g4, and I don't take back. As I said, I'm just going to play h5 and just try and rip open the king. So after rook to h8, I sat here and thought for a while, and I was like, okay, I can just play f takes g4, but I thought that after something like bishop to e6, or maybe even just e6 seems a little bit worse, but I thought that black was managing to consolidate here. And I didn't like the idea that black was getting away. So instead of any of that, what I did was I threw a wrench in the black position and I played e6. And you wonder what the idea of e6 is. If you take back with the pawn, the idea is now this one is destabilized. So I'm actually not even going to take it. I'm going to play this move, and I'm going to attack it a third time. And I'm just going to play rook takes g6, and that's just going to be game over. Say you try and defend it like this, it doesn't matter. I'm going to play rook takes g6 and take this way, and now the queen has opened up with the rook to team up, and this pawn is actually just going to promote too. So taking with the pawn is definitely not a viable option. Leaving it is really not an option either because I'm going to take here and then take on g6 again. So you have to do something about it. So my opponent takes with the bishop, which is definitely the best move here. And so after bishop takes e6, my idea is that now I can still destabilize because now that there's a bishop on e6, this bishop hangs if pawn takes bishop. So he does not take on g6, but instead tries to anticipate a coming attack. Unfortunately for my opponent, the attack had already come, and now I just simply play f takes g4 with the same idea. You cannot take the bishop because I'm going to go here. So what my opponent does is he defends the bishop. But as soon as he defends the bishop, that stopped defending this e5 square. So I immediately play queen to e5 check. And the idea here is that if you are to move the king, well, if you move to h6, then you're going to lose after, g5 checkmate, actually. If you go to f8, my idea is just to... Actually, my opponent did go to to f8, so I'll save that for a little bit later. If you block with f6, then I don't have to worry about this anymore. The bishop is no longer hanging because there's not a pawn attacking it, and I can just play something like queen to f4. So say f6, queen to f4. Now this pawn is defended another time. This bishop is just completely dominating the black position. But my opponent plays king to f8, which I thought was the strongest move. And now here, I play the move h6. And this is such a nasty move because you cannot actually take the bishop at all. None of the moves where you attempt to take the bishop work. Say you take this way. What do I do then? Well, here I'm going to play rook to f1 check or rook f4 check. Either one works. And if you try and go this way, now I will just play h7, I believe. No, not here. It's not h7 here. What it is here is actually I'm just going to go like this. And now this is cut off. So, okay. If you play king to e8, where is it h7? It might be h7 actually. Wait. Hold on, I'm calculating. 1 second. It also might just be this, but I think it's queen to b8. The idea of after queen to c8, I can just take and maybe play g5, and then this pawn is going to be cemented for the rest of the game. There might also be another... Wait, am I supposed to... I think I might actually... Oh, wait. It does matter. It does matter. After takes, I have to play rook f4 check, because now I do have h7, because rook takes h7 does not exist. My bad. Right? And so after rook f8, if you play rook f8, I just play rook takes f8, and after rook takes f8, I promote to a queen and I win. And if king takes f8, I win this way. So yeah, my bad. It does actually have to be rook to f4 check. Rook f1 check doesn't work. So say you block with the bishop this way. So now what I do is I play rook takes bishop. And after takes, rook f1. And after here, now I can play queen to b8 because queen c8 doesn't exist anymore. The other thing here is I think h7 might exist too. h7 is also a possibility. And after h7, rook g7, then queen here, actually. Yes, this would win. Because after here, I think there'd be check, take. I'm misremembering the lines in this game. But, okay, here. I'll just use this because I am struggling right now. Okay, bishop to f7. Yes, it is h7. If rook to g7, now it is takes. Because now if takes, then check here, and then you take the rook. And that's just completely winning. So you play h7, and once the rook moves, then you can take the bishop. You can't take the bishop yet. You can't take the bishop here because the rook is not defended, or the rook is defended currently. So you play h7 to displace, h7 to displace, and then you take the bishop. And you saw the main move by the computer was to play this move, and the idea here is now I'm just going to take, and I'm kind of just crashing through with all of these moves. Like, all of these are threats. So if you try and do this, I'm just going to play this. Now my rooks are getting in. I'm going to play h7 still, right? Just everything's collapsing in black's position. What happened in the game was this move king to e8. And after king to e8, now I still have h7. The idea behind king to e8 by my opponent was the fact that now he can play this move rook to f8. So he's not losing a rook anymore. And this is insane because you still cannot take the bishop either way. Crazy stuff here. So h6 is such a nice move to be able to play. Sacking the bishop 2 different ways. It cannot be taken. So after king e8, h7, rook f8, I can't take this rook. So I play bishop f5, just getting the bishop out of danger now. So now my opponent plays this move queen to d6. And I just take and say your pawns are awful. I just trade down into this endgame. And you'll notice, actually, everything in the black position is completely paralyzed currently. I mean, as it stands, this rook can't move anywhere. This rook can't move anywhere. This bishop, once it moves, hangs this pawn. And so the king is really the only thing that can move right now, right? And if you take this, by the way, it's my move. So I played king c2. And if you take this, I take, and then this is hanging too. So what my opponent does after king c2 is he plays king e7. And I just don't want to let the king in, so I play rook to h6, cutting off this, basically just this entire rank, but more importantly, preventing king to f6. Because if the king gets over to g7, that kind of throws a wrench in my plans. And so that's not what you want. At this point, he's kind of just running out of moves. So what my opponent does is he plays a6. The idea here, by the way, is that if he does something like rook to c8, now I will take the bishop and then take and play rook f4 with the threat of rook f6, and then just eat everything and play g5, g6, g7, and take the rook. I mean, not quite that simple, but say after, say, like this, I will take. After king takes, I play this. After here, I now just, like, take the pawns. If you take with the king, then I'm going to do this, and then take the rook, and then walk the king in and eat these. And if you take with the rook, guess what? I still am able to trade rooks, but just this way, and I do the exact same thing. And this endgame is completely winning for me. Right? Because I just have an extra pawn, and I'm going to play... Well, I can also just go after these. So you go after mine, I go after yours. Right? And once you take, I just push, and I will win that every time. But okay. He plays a6 because he does not want to move the rook away from the f-file. So what happens here is I just keep moving my king in. My plan is just to eventually maybe put the king on f4 or put the king on h5 and try and play g5 and g6. This is like my game plan, basically. Maybe eventually take this bishop. My opponent plays b5, and I'm like, okay, I really don't want to allow some sort of pawn storm and like create weaknesses on the queen side, so I just play this move a4. This is basically saying, okay, if you take, I take, and then this pawn is also another target for me to go after. So he does not do that. Instead, he plays the move rook to b8. And so now his idea is if I take, he's not going to take back with the pawn, but with the rook. And now I have targets again. And the last thing I wanted is targets, so I just shut it down and play this a5 move. So now basically the queen side is basically locked now, and this actually becomes a weakness as well because there's no b7 pawn anymore. And he plays rook to c8. And now I see my opportunity. If you remember, I mentioned that once there's no rook on f8, I can play bishop e6 and then rook to f4. And that is exactly what happens. And I play rook to f4. Basically just threatening to do this. And again, if you play something like this, what I can do is I can take, and after king takes, I can first off just play this, but I think it's a little bit more accurate to go like this. And even better for me now, the pawns are even closer to my king, right? So now when you try and do the same thing, now the pawns are even closer to my king. I don't even have to go down here, and they also can't move. They can't escape my king. So even better for me now. So rook b8, I play a5, and I see my opportunity, take, and here. And so he sees the incoming threat of rook ff6 and preemptively prepares to defend this pawn. I play this anyway, just doubling up on the 6th rank because that's where all of the pawns are. And now once he moves the king defending the pawn, I follow through with my plan. I'm just going to try and play g6 and g7. Once I play g5, he plays rook to e7. And I just play g6. He has to stop me from playing rook f7 and g7, because if I get that, it's just game over. So he plays rook to g7. And here I'm gonna get it through anyway. Now I just play rook back to h1, and my two-move plan is to play rook to f1 and rook to f7, or rook to f8, depending on where the king is. After rook h1, he just plays e5, and I play rook f1, and he just resigns here. There is basically nothing you can do. So say you try king to e7, then I have rook f7, takes, takes, and actually I'm just gonna the rook, sack the rook, because I'm gonna get a queen. Even better here, actually, would probably be this move to go here and win the rook. So yeah, you can't allow rook f7. And if you play king to e8, saying, haha, now rook f7 doesn't come with check, so if you go there, I'll take the g6 pawn, and f8 is defended twice, you can't go there, I just go to f8 anyway. Because the problem is, once this trade occurs, there's no longer a rook on h8 preventing me from queening, so I just queen, and then I go like this, and win the other rook. So yeah, after after the move, that's too far back. After after I just played rook h1 and then rook f1, my opponent here simply resigned as the game was over. And so in this game, I was I sat here calculating I sat here in this position calculating h6 for close to 20 or 30 minutes. This move this move is like really really beautiful in my opinion. Just because like okay, again, you're hanging the bishop two ways and it doesn't matter how you take it, you lose either way. Because my rooks are just somehow too fast to get to the f file, and the queen is kind of keeping an eye on the back rank as well. And these two rooks are just paralyzed in the corner here. They're just completely paralyzed. Actually, you'll notice in this position, since rook takes f6 hangs this rook, both of these rooks actually have no good moves, right? And they can't move side to side. Both rooks are playing no part in the game at all. And I just take advantage of that. Neither one can move. It's completely crazy. But yeah, so that was my game against Street. In my opinion, it was a very beautiful game. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I will be posting another video soon, and wish me luck, by the way, because this weekend I'll be playing in the World Open in Philadelphia. We'll be flying out early tomorrow morning, at about 7 o'clock Central Daylight Time. So wish me luck. It's a 9-round tournament. It's gonna be kind of brutal. Um, so yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.